My advice to folks is if in this moment you're planning for 2028, you're going to get rolled by the people in the streets. You just need to be out there making sure you're helping and doing things like Cory Booker's doing things like Bernie Sanders, AOC, things that we see people out talking to folks.
Tim Walz, the man who is not the vice president of the United States of America, but he is the governor of one of our 50 states, the one that gave us Jesse Ventura. And I gotta tell you, maybe we should hand Minnesota over to Canada. Honestly. All right, raise your hand if you're transgender. The Democrat Party, boy, do they have a lot of issues. Let me tell you. Talking about issues. This was Michael Piercy's response yesterday. We were sharing this on a text thread. And his response was, it was bound to happen eventually. What was it that was bound to happen eventually, Chris? Well, here it is. Two men will face each other in the Women's Championship title, the Ultimate Billiard Championship. You know, shooting pool there. This is in the United Kingdom, where they're famous for buggery. Buggery is it's one of their things, not just in the Navy, but everywhere. There, a lot of buggery going on there because they like it. But this is a pretty amazing story. Two men will face each other for a women's championship at the Ultimate Pool Women's Pro Series event in Wigan, the United Kingdom. Harriet Haynes, who is a dude dressed like a lady, and Lucy Smith, who is a dude, look like a lady, but not really. Both transgender identifying males beat all female competitors to take the spots in the women's final event. Doesn't that make perfect sense to everyone? That's truly amazing. They've got the Women's Billiard Championship, shooting pool, got their pool cues, show up with their special pool cues, got a little case like Minnesota Fats, open it up, take out the two pieces, screw them together, and you got your billiard cue. And then you start shooting billiards, right? And, hey, wait a minute. That lady's a dude. What's up with that? Why is there a dude who's dressed like a lady competing, and then the two dudes win, and they win and they win. And then the pool championship becomes, for women, becomes a competition between two men because the left is mentally ill. The Daily Caller has a story. UK, that's the United Kingdom. It's like another country altogether. UK Women's Pool Championship match has two transgenders squaring off against each other in a true clown show. I think that's fair. Andrew Powell writing the story at the Daily Caller and getting it right. This is about as clown show as you can get. When a women's champion is crowned by Ultimate Pool for Sunday's Pro Series event, the winner will be a transgender, yes, a biological male. And the reason is due to the fact that Lucy Smith and Harriet Haynes, both transgender athletes, being in the final. There are only two women in the final, and both of them are men. In the 2024 campaign, Haynes ended things as the number one ranked female Ultimate Pool Pro Series player. And it looks like that Haynes is now headed toward winning the championship again in 2025. Haynes also won the 2022 title while being the runner-up the next year in 2023. Sure, per the official website of Ultimate Pool, the champion gets 1,800 pounds. They don't even use dollars. It's not like real money. which is around $2,320. The second place competitor receives 900 pounds, about $1,160. The remainder of the top placements, 2,700 pounds. That's combined, and 16 players in total being paid. But they got two dudes who are now squaring off. I guess they squared off yesterday. I missed it. I don't think it was on the Wide World of Sports, but it sure should be. So these two dudes are competing, and this is what the left does with their gender dysphoria, and it's like monkeypox. It spreads from there to here and here to there, and the buggery is, more than they can stand. But isn't that amazing? And with that, we have this is pretty amazing. A California Democrat named Rich Chavez Zbur, last name Z-B-U-R, Z-B-U-R. And that's Rich Chavez Z-B-U-R. And he is an elected Democrat in California, and he has gender dysphoria. Now, I don't think he's actually a tranny, but he's a Democrat, and he's an elected official, right, in the state assembly in California, and obviously he's a Democrat. And here is California Democrat Rich Chavez Burr on, because there are big debates going on now whether we should let men compete as women in women's sporting events, because we used to laugh at the East Germans for doing that during the communist days. Now the Democrats are the communists. The Democrats are the East Germans. The East Germans during the Soviet days would send women with penises and testicles and hairy chests, and they'd have them compete as women in everything. And they'd have men competing as women in the swimming events and everything else, throwing javelins and shot puts, like, hey, boy, that East German woman is kind of big and has strange protrusions in the woman's thing. So here's California Democrat Rich Chavez Zbur.
This is really reminiscent to me of what happened in Nazi Germany in the 1930s. We are moving towards we are moving towards autocracy in this country. In Nazi Germany, transgender people were persecuted, barred from public life, and the way that it started was the same kinds of things that are happening in this country by the Trump administration.
It's Nazism if you don't let men compete against women in sports. It's authoritarianism. Now, you're a ghastly, genderless, mentally ill person, and he outward appearances, you might think that he's perfectly normal. But California Democrat compares Save Girls Sports law. The Republicans are proposing legislation called Save Girls Sports, so you can let girls compete against girls and women compete against women. And the Democrats say, you guys are Nazis. And then they killed all the Jews, which was kind of weird, and 1 million babies, and they harvested their organs and used them for medical experimentation, and then they call everybody else Nazis. Isn't that amazing? So California Democrat compares Save Girls Sports law to Nazi Germany as two transgender athlete bans. These bills fail to pass in California. Zbur's comments caused a woman to leave during the hearing because she had had enough of this mental illness that is the Democratic Party today. I don't know if Zbur went off and, threw Molotov cocktails at Teslas after this. Firebomb shot the place up. But the California state legislature failed to pass two separate bills aimed at protecting girls' sports from transgender inclusion. It just says trans, but trans does not explain what we're talking. It's transgender, transnational, trans fats. There are a lot of trans. We're talking about trannies, transgender. RuPaul says trannies is okay. I go with RuPaul on that. He can call the tune on that. So trans inclusion. During debate for one of the bills, Democrat state lawmaker compared the proposals to practices employed by Nazi Germany in the Holocaust. That's right. California Assembly member Rick Chavez Zbur made the comparison while arguing against the bill that would protect girls' sports. And you're a Nazi. I got to tell you, you guys, you're starting stuff. All right, and then in the state of Washington, they've got a similarly situated gang of Democrats, and they're mentally ill people who don't know science, they don't know gender, they don't know anything, but they're in charge, and they've been elected by Democrats because. So they've got a Washington, in the state of Washington, state representative there, Christine Reeves. Christine Reeves is also in favor of stealing trophies from girls and scholarships and stealing everything good. So Washington State Democratic Rep Christine Reeves, who she's African-American-ish, right? I mean, I was watching the video and I was like, maybe not. But she's playing the race card anyway. And it's not Nazi Germany. Now it's the Democrat Party with their bullwhips and lynching trees and slavery. The Democrats.
People like my grandfather were told that they could not participate in sporting activities because he was a black man. People generated science to compel people to believe in the argument that my father, my grandfather, my grandmother, my great-grandparents were less than in our society. We are repeating history, Madam Speaker.
Yes, we're repeating because when the trannies, that is to say men, come in to compete as women, if you don't let them, you're a Nazi or you're a Democrat with a plantation and a bullwhip and a lynching tree because, isn't that amazing? And you whip out the race card because she's a Democrat and she's, African-American or something. So she's got one card to play, and she plays it over and over again. Isn't that amazing? Yeah, it's not allowing men to compete as women is like racial segregation and Jim Crow laws, which the Democrats created. Every single Jim Crow law was a Democrat law. She is a Democrat. Aren't they amazing? And in the UK, two men I don't feel the need to say biological men because that's what the word men means. And the word woman means biological woman. Aren't they amazing?
You guys know the rules. You got 5 minutes. Half-eaten weenies don't count. May the best man win.
May the best man win. I got an update on Mahmoud Khalil today, too. He wrote an op-ed or something, and he's very angry, and he hates the Jews. Boy, does he hate the Jews. All right, let's take a phone call, Michael. Let's go to, let's go to Jim, calling from southwestern Missouri. Jimmy, you're on the Chris Plant Show.
Yes, sir. Hi, Chris.
Hey, Jim.
Hey, I grew up in Washington, and pretty happy not to be there. It's crazy land now.
It is.
And the Brits were exploring the darker recesses of transgender dysphoria a long time ago. Remember Clockwork Orange?
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
A violent dysphoric dystopia. Seems like the whole thing's come about. And Warren Buffett was, to change the subject for a moment, hoarding cash months ago in anticipation of a market crash because the stock market and housing are obviously hard assets that are overinflated and benefiting the wealthy. And he knew a correction was coming, and any number of things could have triggered it. And I'm suspicious that Trump's smart enough to have known that his tariffs would precipitate a correction in the market and, more importantly, at the same time, a reordering. I think it was very much all a planned event.
Well, it is time for a reordering based on what I've been gobbling up. And all of they talk a lot about equity, but they use the words, they don't know what they mean. The inequitable trade deals that we have with our great friends in Japan and South Korea and with the European Union and Mexico and Canada. And we are on the losing end of every one of those genius deals that were created by our political leadership over the last 50 years. And I'm in favor of a correction, certainly, of epic and historic proportions to bring the United States back to where we ought to be, and that is the world's economic leader. The dollar as the currency, the standard for the world. And we, $36 trillion in debt is completely insane. And it's time that we shook ourselves out of the malaise that we've been in all these years and get our act together. And Jim, I was unaware of the Warren Buffett thing, but I'm going to go look for it. And I know you're right. That's great stuff. Jim, thank you. Thank you very much. You know that the all-new Eden Pure Thunderstorm air purifier has finally arrived, and this new thunderstorm uses two technologies. Studies have shown these two technologies help to kill up to 99.9% of bacteria floating in the air. Also takes care of dust and pet stuff and a whole lot more, and helps get rid of any odor. With no filters to replace again and again like some air filters, the Thunderstorm will help get rid of any stinky smell, guaranteed. Litter boxes, trash cans, cigarette smoke, left-wing protesters, a teenager's room. No match for the Eden Pure Thunderstorm. And right now, because you hang out with me, you can save $200 American on an Eden Pure Thunderstorm 3-pack for whole home protection. Put one in your basement, your bedroom, your teenager's room, any place you like to breathe clean, fresh air. And all you have to do is go to EdenPureDeals.com, EdenPureDeals.com, and use the discount code CHRIS3, because you're going to get 3 of them to save $200 on 3 thunderstorms. That's EdenPureDeals.com. The discount code is CHRIS3. Yes, sir. All right, I've got President Trump coming up. Another epic press conference aboard Air Force One last night. I have it for you coming up. Chris here with a list of things that none of us should trust. The Washington Post, the New York Times, anything on CNN. Here's a list of things that I do trust. The Washington Times. Support real journalism for just $1 a week at WashingtonTimes.com/Chris. All right, President Trump coming up because, once again, coming home from Florida aboard Air Force One, and he didn't slip into a coma like Joe Biden did when he was on Air Force One. They put him in an iron lung down in the cargo hold when he was coming home. They had to use the paddles on him to reanimate him when they landed the airplane. But President Trump took lots and lots of questions from the news media. And I've got, the economy, and you hear what Saudi Arabia is doing? Because energy is kind of a big deal when it comes to global economy. I've got updates for you. And I hope to get to a friend of mine with a story about his next-door neighbor being, a rabid political leftist. They can't get along with anybody, don't know what gender is. Democrats. Now, President Trump is raising Cain. He's like General Cain, raising Cain. I don't want to curse or anything, so I'm going to say raising Cain. But the breaking news out of the United Kingdom is the European, President Trump imposing sanctions and trying to level the playing field when it comes to our trade deals with our allies like the United Kingdom and the European Union and Japan and South Korea and Australia and beyond. But here's the breaking news out of the United Kingdom. We stand ready is the kind of micro headline. The European Union says they're ready to negotiate with the United States. Says they've offered 0 for 0 tariffs. 0 for 0 tariffs. That's what the United Kingdom is now offering. Well, why do you have tariffs on the United States in the first place? Why do we have an economic and competitive disadvantage when it comes to doing trade with the United Kingdom England. You know, King Charles and whatever that woman's name is they're in Italy. They're traveling in Italy now. Happy to see he's up and about. My old friend, Chuck. I haven't talked to him since he was Prince Chuck, but so Colin Rugg has the breaking news. The European Union now says they're ready to negotiate with the United States and says they've offered 0 for 0 tariffs. The announcement was made by European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen. Ursula von der Leyen, the European Commission President, said, Europe is always ready for a good deal. So we keep it on the table. Von der Leyen added that the EU offered 0 for 0 tariffs for industrial goods. What about agricultural goods? Because Europe is always ready for a good deal. Well, that's great, but that's part of the story, but that's not the whole story, is it? No, it's not. Also, President Trump has now said zero hedge is on the case. Trump said if China does not withdraw its 34% increase above their already long-term trading abuses by tomorrow, April 8th, 2025, the United States will impose additional tariffs on China of 50% effective April 9th. Effective April 9th. Going to make slavery just a little bit more expensive for the communists in China. So the European Union says that they're open to talks with the U.S., offering 0 for 0 tariffs. President Trump is brushing China back. He's doing it fast. I mean, are we even 90 days in? I don't think we're 90 days in. We're not even close to being 90 days, right? Am I right? Into the presidency this time around. And there's a lot of stuff going on. Now, Breitbart has a story today that, and this is big stuff, the Agriculture Secretary Rollins says 50 countries already coming to the table on tariffs. Isn't that amazing? And she, in fact, I've got that coming up in her audio. She was on CNN. Brooke Rollins, the Secretary of the Department of Agriculture. But let's get to President Trump, because he's finally standing up for us. We finally have a president that's standing up for us. Presidents should have been doing this decades ago, but weren't. President Trump is a businessman. He's a money guy. He's a nuts and bolts guy, and he's having none of this. And now, Agriculture Secretary Brooke Rollins said on CNN, State of the Union, that the Trump administration's tariffs are already making countries negotiate. But let me get to President Trump from Air Force One last night when he was coming home from Florida. And he's talking about what he's doing with the economy and the tariffs and how he's, using American muscle to level the playing field, because the playing field is disadvantageous to us in practically every trade deal we have around the world, including with our allies. President Trump on Air Force One last night.
I don't want anything to go down, but sometimes you have to take medicine to fix something. And we have such a horrible, we have been treated so badly by other countries because we had stupid leadership that allowed this to happen. Now we have hundreds of billions of dollars is pouring into our country. On a monthly basis, it's pouring. It's already started because they put tariffs on. And eventually it's going to straighten out, and our country will be solid and strong again.
And eventually our country will be solid and strong again. And he said, I know it's going down, stock market's going down. Sometimes you got to take medicine. Now, if Democrats were doing this, if Barack Obama were doing this, the news media would be singing just a spoonful of medicine. A spoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down. That's the lyric, right? And they'd be singing. They'd be showing Julie Andrews or whoever, singing just a spoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down. And the news media would be smiling and applauding it and not setting Teslas on fire and attacking people and all that. but President Trump. And then still aboard Air Force One talking about China and our trade with China, very, very out of balance.
When they look at the fact that we have $1 billion trade deficit, when you look at the trade deficit that we have with certain countries, way over $1 billion per country. With China, it's $1 trillion. And we have to solve our trade deficit with China. We have $1 trillion trade deficit with China.
And it hurts our economy, and it hurts jobs, and it hurts the price of everything in the United States when we have these trade deficits, and we're $36 trillion in debt. And that is not sustainable. It should not be acceptable. Our political leaders have failed us for so long that they're a disgrace. And President Trump saying, hey, listen, and again, our Agriculture Secretary, Brooke Rollins, saying 50 countries reached out. President Trump on Air Force One last night.
I spoke to a lot of leaders, European, Asian, from all over the world. They're dying to make a deal. But I said, we're not going to have deficits with your country. We're not going to do that, because to me, a deficit is a loss. We're going to have surpluses, or we're at worst going to be breaking even.
And now the Europeans and the European Union, they're saying, hey, let's do zero for a zero. What do you think? We won't have tariffs if you don't have tariffs. See, that would be free trade. Isn't that crazy? President Trump last night on the Europeans.
Europe has been very, very bad to us. Europe has taken our leaders for a ride. They don't take our cars. They don't take our food products. They don't take anything. Europe's treated us very badly. We put a big tariff on Europe. They are coming to the table. They want to talk, but there's no talk unless they pay us a lot of money on a yearly basis.
Unless they pay us a lot of money on a yearly basis. And these are our allies. You know, we saved them from the Soviet Union. We saved them from the Socialist Workers' Party of Adolf Hitler. We saved them from the Kaiser's boys. We save them again and again, and then, you know, we go to the table for a trade deal, and we're screwed. Are you kidding me? Nothing could be more ridiculous. We have a Secretary of the Department of Treasury, seems to be a smart guy. His name is Scott Bessent. Scott Bessent was on one of your clownish Sunday morning shows yesterday, and he was asked about all this trade data and tariffs on China and all this.
What I like is data. And if we look at data from President Trump's first term, and there's a big study that just came out from a group of economists, mostly at MIT, that showed that a 20% tariff on China led to a 0.7% price level increase over 4 years. I think that's pretty good. If we can take in 20% in tariffs and it's a 0.7% increase.
Not so bad, not so bad. Also, energy is vitally important to this. And Saudi Arabia has stepped up, and this is a very, very important development. Saudi Arabia has announced, what are they doing? What do they have to contribute to the dance? Well, they've got oil. That's what they have. And Saudi Arabia is now saying they're going to reduce the price of oil. The price of oil will drop because Saudi Arabia says so. The price of energy will drop because Saudi Arabia says so. And that is a darn good thing for us and for everybody. Saudis slash oil prices for Asia days after a surprise output hike, meaning they're producing more oil, so the oil output is increasing. And they've announced they slashed the price of oil to Asia. It is a global commodity, and that means that the price of oil will go down, and it's already going down because of things that President Trump is doing here. Scott Bessent, the Secretary of the entire Treasury Department, talking about the thing, and this guy is a big money guy, too.
A little publicized story this week. Everyone wants to look at the stock market going down. You know what else went down? Oil prices went down almost 15% in 2 days, which impacts working Americans much more than the stock market does. Interest rates hit their low for the year, so I'm expecting the mortgage applications to pick up.
And by the way, he's talking about the oil prices going down yesterday. President Trump was talking about it on Friday. And the Saudi Arabia stories are in the last 3 hours. The first story I can find is from 8 hours ago. Saudi Arabia slashes oil prices ahead of output boost. So that is good news for the whole world. And that means it's good news for us because the world runs on inexpensive and abundant energy. See 3 days of the Condor. A lot of fun having to do with that because amazing stuff. On Saturday Night Live, where they try to be funny every now and then, and occasionally it works a little bit. Saturday Night Live, night before last Saturday night when they usually show it, they mocking Trump over tariffs.
Thank you all for coming out to hear about tariffs. My favorite word, tariff, which of course is short for terrific idea. They mean we're going to make America wealthy again. Mawa! Mawa, more. You know, you're going to check your stock portfolio in a couple days and think, I'm almost too wealthy. We're doing Mawa. But before that, we're going to do Magda. Magda. Make America Great Depression again. You know, this depression is going to be so great. We'll be the ones eating the cats and the dogs. That's going to be fun.
James Austin Johnson doing the Trump impression on Saturday Night Live. And, yeah, going to make America a Great Depression again. The Democrats are rooting for and hoping for a Great Depression, for economic catastrophe. Because, you know, if Trump wins, then they're going to look like the corrupt morons that they are. And they certainly don't want that, do they? Now, Elon Musk was asked about trade with Europe. And what do you think he said? Because now the president of the European Union, this nice lady I was just reading from, she's saying today, she's saying, hey, how about zero tariffs for zero tariffs? What about that? Sounds like an Elon Musk idea.
I hope it is agreed that both Europe and the United States should move, ideally, in my view, to a zero tariff situation, effectively creating a free trade zone between Europe and North America.
Just imagine something like that, because now what do we have? Holy cow, we've got the president of the European Union saying, let's do zero tariffs for zero tariffs with the United States. And this is once again the Trump administration and the Trump people being ahead of the curve.
We stand ready to negotiate with the United States. Indeed, we have offered zero for zero tariffs for industrial goods, as we have successfully done with many other trading partners.
Yeah, we have. Yeah, Guben-Stickenstein. That is good. Says da. So very, very good. I'm very happy about that. And free trade, imagine that. And why is all this happening? It's happening because President Trump is making it happen. The Democrats are dead set against it because they can't stand the idea that President Trump's policies would lead to successful results. And they will do everything they can to undermine that. And if it hurts the American people, that will make the Democratic Party very happy. Very happy. Because they're not on our side. President Trump also talking about, let's do number 19. President Trump on Air Force One talking about war in the Middle East and Iran, the bad guys, and the Democrats funding Iran and funding the Houthis and funding Hamas and funding Hezbollah. The Democrats are with billions and billions of dollars and lots of oil riches not on our side.
There's a lot of things going on with the Middle East right now that have to be silenced. You know, we had no problem with the Middle East. Everything was done. We had no problem with Iran. We had no problem with anybody. And then you had October 7th.
And then you had the genocidal jihadis of Hamas, funded by Iran. Iran funded by Joe Biden gave him $6 billion for 5 hostages, freed up the global oil markets for Iranian oil and for Russian oil. So Joe Biden's moves helped to fund the war against Israel and to fund the war against Ukraine. And they can't all be that dumb, can they? Yes. Yeah, I've got a friend who texted me during the show here today, and he's law enforcement. I'll just say law enforcement and leave it vague. And he has a neighbor. Brian is his name, Brian. Brian texted me. He says, my neighbor, who's a Democrat, used to wave at me when she passed by our house, even though we have a Trump flag in the front yard, you know. Since November, however, since the election, she stopped waving. Yesterday, he says, I saw she now has a flag in her front yard that has, it's a big flag, a Democrat flag. It quotes Supreme Court Justice Sotomayor, right, who was the middleweight boxing champion of the world. And the Sotomayor flag says, with fear for our democracy, I dissent. With fear, because she, this dramatic Jake LaMotta-like ruling by her, she looks like Jake LaMotta, doesn't she? It was one of her staffers that leaked the Roe versus Wade decision, too, that led to the assassination attempt on Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh and two other justices. One of her staffers, this is my hypothesis, but I've got things to base it on. And so the next door neighbor doesn't wave anymore because the Democrat Party is out of its mind, and they'd rather firebomb your Tesla than wave and say good morning because of the mental illness and their gender dysphoria. And I looked it up. It turns out it was a dissent in an anti-Trump case that Sonia Sotomayor, this with fear for our democracy. Hey, you're a Supreme Court justice. You went to nothing but Ivy League institutions. We're a constitutional republic, right? We're not like an old school Greek democracy. We're a constitutional republic. And as a member of the Supreme Court, maybe you should be aware of that. Just thinking, just saying. So we got that going. Sonia Sotomayor, who's a Jake LaMotta impersonator. What's up with her anyway? These people, Sonia Sotomayor. Yeah, she's Yale and then Princeton for law school, and she still doesn't know that we're a constitutional democracy, and she's a Supreme Court justice. Must have been all those punches to the head being Jake LaMotta and everything. Wah, wah, wah. Yeah. Crazy, man, crazy. AOC leads Chuck Schumer by 18% in a poll. Looks like the Democrats are going to try to run her against Chuck Schumer. He said the wrong thing. Now it's time for him to go. And Michelle Obama's podcast is humiliating. The ratings are so low that they're describing them as humiliating.